It is really exciting to be here on this Wednesday, and maybe inappropriately enough, I feel completely energized for our webinar. I'm, as many of you know, who potentially work at Capture or listen to other webinars that I've done, I am a search nerd. So anytime I get a chance to talk about re-energizing search, that is a great thing. But let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Jamie Gleason. I'm here outside of Philadelphia in beautiful Bucks County. I've been in higher ed for about 14 years, as you can read there. I consider myself a farmer and a fixer, and I think those are two attributes that really dovetail well in the enrollment management field and in higher ed in general. There's always a challenge to be faced, and as you all out there are listening, you know that this summer has been challenging in many ways, and the fall will probably be no different. So I'm super excited that you've taken a little bit of your time to spend with us today. And when I say us, I actually mean myself and Anna. So Anna, will you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. This is Anna Haverlesko. I'm the Director of Communication Strategy over at Capture. I've been with Capture for about 7 years now, and I've been working with higher ed or in the higher ed industry for about 13 years. I came to it kind of by accident, as you can kind of see on my bio, but I've really fallen in love with the industry and with the people that that make up that industry. So I'm happy to be here today with Jamie to talk about, well, he's going to talk about search, and I'm going to talk a little bit about email and kind of how that can fit into some different strategies to use with recruitment in changing times.
Excellent. And for those of you out there, just a little bit more information. Anna and I are kind of the two Capture farmers. There are probably others, but we're the ones that kind of wear it on our sleeves. We love to spend time on our property, and we both have gardens and are big vegetable harvesters. So for any fellow gardeners out there, thanks for joining us, and the tomatoes are on the way. So a little bit about Capture for those of you who maybe are not familiar with our company. Capture is an 11-year-old company based out of Louisville, Kentucky. We are pioneers in the space of behavioral intelligence, and our platform is built on 4 essential ingredients, as you can see there, 4 primary software products: Engage, Apply, Aid, and Enroll. And then on the right side of the screen, you see the solutions that we are overseeing, and that is all powered by the service providers that work at Capture, the team members, the folks behind the curtain in some cases, and in cases like this, I guess I'm not exactly behind the curtain, but I'm out front. So it's Capture is a very unique place. Anna and I are both shaking our heads because we love working here. We love what we do. And that is, I would say, in no small part because of the pioneering that we do in the industry. We're excited about change, about efficacy, and making sure that things that are going on in the higher ed space, particularly when it comes to enrollment and advancement, are really capitalizing on the information that we know and the data sets that we have to study when it comes to our partners. And you're going to hear actually some of that today in today's presentation. One thing that we hope comes out loud and clear is that Capture loves to measure and make ourselves better by those measurements. So anything that we can do to measure the results of a campaign, understand how it can be more effective or better optimized, that's what we do. And in fact, that's a large part of what Anna's going to share about when it comes to email marketing. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about today's agenda. There are 3 primary points that we're going to cover. Best search strategies in this test optional world that we're kind of embarking on. How to execute effective email and get a way better response than you're used to. And then the last one's going to be a checklist. What are the things that we can do, kind of the things that we need to be remembering as we enter this fall, which is going to be so very unique in the space. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the first section, so let's get going on strategic search. So let's just paint the backdrop. I know I'm preaching to the choir when I say this, but this has been a very unique year. We have seen virtually no deployment of the standardized tests that we're used to the underclassmen funnels that we're trying to build. And as a result, many of us are facing a vacuum, but this is also driving some other items in our industry. This graph actually represents the last 24 months of test optional institutions that have moved test optional. And you know, for the longest time, I held the opinion that test optional, while it was a thing, it wouldn't necessarily have a massive impact on the deployment of tests to underclassmen. But as you can see here, in the summer, between the spring of 20 and the summer of 20, which we are currently sitting in, there has been a 10 times plus increase in the number of institutions that have gone test optional. Now, some of those are temporary test optional, as you can read the headlines and understand that, and kind of get a sense for what that is. But in another sense, there are many institutions that I'm sure have looked at this, become test optional, and said, you know, this is probably going to be our final destination. So the question that emerges for me as I think about this is that question of, is test optional gone for good? There are several studies that are out there, including a massive one from the University of California system that actually surmises that removing the test as a admissions requirement actually does more to harm access to education than promote it. I think for a long time, proponents have been saying, you know, get rid of the test, it's a barrier to access, and other verbiage like that. However, I think we're seeing the opposite of that, and it's really pushing the question of, is being test optional something that will go away forever for many of these institutions that this summer have made that that made that change. 290 when I put this graph together. I actually believe that it's more than that now. I think the aggregated total number of schools that are now test optional is over 1,200 in the United States. So here are the arguments of why I think tests are important and probably not going anywhere. We all know that state contracts are some of the things that drive standardized tests to be in place and to gain and hold that foothold that they have. They're simply, you know, they've been established. They're almost, you know, too big to fail, as the graphic says there. And then secondarily to that, we all know that high schools rely on those, and actually state budgets for high schools rely on those to assess metrics. The time period that we're in right now is so incredibly fascinating because of these metrics and questions of access and equality and things like that are all playing into this. But certainly that third point for me is the one that's really kind of on the chopping block, right? I've held for a long time that we've seen test optional, those rates grow, but it's been too slow to make a significant difference when it comes to search purchasing and things like that. You know, if we look at over time, College Board, you know, annually, those numbers stay relatively similar. There might be like some ebbs and flows based on high school diploma rate deployment. But for the most part, you know, those rates have kind of, they've been holding steady, and I think that's in large part due to the underclassmen tests that feed these. Whether you believe they're gone for good or not, we all know that right now, in this moment in time, there is a need to respond. Many of you out there, if you're in the enrollment space, are currently facing shortages for your fall 21 and fall 22. I was talking with a colleague this morning and looking at a funnel year-over-year report. I'm sure that many of you are saying, well, where are my inquiries that I'm so, you know, used to having at this point or soon to have? This has become a significant issue, and it's an issue that burdens many people, myself included. So obviously, since we have, since Capture works in the space of search, we have been doing due diligence for our partners in trying to proverbially overturn every stone. really try to look through the sources that are available and try to move through them in order to fill the voids that are apparent and growing for many of our partners. And if you've been paying attention to the news, you also know that even with the return to some scheduled administration of the ACT and SAT and other tests, standardized tests, we also know that there are space limitations and testing sites are full. So there could be a trickle down of this slow search rate all the way into and past potentially into December as those things get worked out and as those sites become available. But anyway, taking a look at this sheet that I have on your screen, one of the things that we've been doing in Overturning Every Stone is looking at, first of all, the traditional sources, right? Making sure that you're uncovering all the names that are potentially there for all of the College Board tests. Just in terms of, you know, by way of reminder, the PSAT has kind of trickled into their pipeline from the College Board. So make sure that you're continuing to check those sources, even though they haven't necessarily put in any new SAT tests. There have been deployments of PSAT and some other lists that they've put on. And then same for ACT and NRCCUA. But let's move to some of the lesser used services. And I honestly have only a smattering of them put here. There is some contextualization I think that's needed as you think about what sources might be working for you. But make sure that you're not overlooking some of the sources that have potentially been there in the background, maybe been unused for a number of years, but maybe this is the time for going out to harvest some additional leads that are there. Services like the College Bound Selection Service or CBSS, the Christian Connector if you're a faith-based institution. And if you haven't done so yet, really pushing into the transfer market with some of the NACAC changes that have been over the last year, now's really the time to capitalize on your previous non-matriculants, but also sources like the PTK Connect, which is formerly known as College Fish. But then there's the new sources. Let's move to the new sources because everyone likes the new and shiny. So I'm actually I have slides for all the new sources. So the new sources that I have here, Plexus is one that I'm gonna go into, cultivating leads from social media and then leveraging your website for creating those leads that are so very much needed. So Plexus, what is Plexus? Many of you might be asking that. It is not a pink drink that you can get, although that's a different spelling of the word Plexus. Plexus is a digital student engagement platform that utilizes many of the things that Capture uses: machine learning, algorithms, really understanding the needs of the engaged students and trying to meet those needs and basically predict the needs that are there. Plexus is a massive source. I have 6 million here. According to the people that we work with in Plexus, it is a source that will grow and blossom to about 8 million before the end of the calendar year. And I think that actually speaks to the fact that many of the other, there's the mechanisms for other lead sourcing and for finding out information about higher ed might be somewhat roadblocked in the current situation that we're in. Plexus is there and it's actually helping students with items of college counseling and understanding how to be a success in college. So it's answering questions actively. So here are I list some of the features there, but my favorite one is the no cold leads. All the engaged leads from Plexus have somehow seen the source of the institution. So for instance, we work with a number of partners. We have been, working with Plexus because in May of this year, in anticipation of this need, we sought out Plexus as a source, and we are actually the preferred partner of Plexus when it comes to search. And we have been able to source for our partners some of the leads that have been missing. The volume might not be as gigantic as some of the other sources that have been traditionally used, but the better part about them is that they've somehow seen the branding of the institution that we're reaching out for, and they've responded to that saying, yes, I'm interested in information from a school like that or a school like this. I'm not going to use partner names because where we are. And of course, as a Gen Xer, I always maintain a certain level of skepticism when it comes to something like this. So my skepticism in this instance was, certainly there will be a lot of duplication. You know, as is for any situation like this, you know, there's going to be a lot of duplication. But to my surprise, in the early list results that we've had, 75% of the leads that we've been purchasing for our partners from Plexus have been unduplicated. So they're brand new to their system, they're not in their system, and this is a powerful tool for meeting maybe some of those vacancies that you have in the upper end of your search funnel in order to reach through to them. And you know, obviously there's conversations that we're having about, you know, where do they go in your pipeline or your CRM, what classifications, and those are things that we are happy to have. But it's turned out it is an excellent source, and we're actually super excited about the relationship that we have, the official relationship that we have with Plexus as of now. So that's the new source number one, Plexus. The next source, as you all know, and we've seen this time and time again, right? Lots of graphs that are pointing up and to the right when it comes to broadband consumption and internet usage during a pandemic. It has been absolutely insane. You know, I can speak for my own 3 children who they each have a device of some sort, and even in that age group of early high school, the usage has been high. And certainly for students who are entering into those college searching years, this has been a great time for them to spend time online. But the question for me becomes, how are we capitalizing on this online presence that is so prolific in the pandemic? So one thing that we have seen, and Capture has been using this for the past few years with our partners, and seeing greater and greater results, is really this kind of crowdsourcing movement of using social media in order to build leads that have demonstrated interest. You know, for many, you know, the concept of geo-IP targeting has been a thing. And while I appreciate geo-IP targeting and it has certain benefits, there are also certain drawbacks to it in the fact that you can actually target an address and potentially get students who are kind of outside, you know, the preferred market that you're getting. So like, you know, you might get someone who's in their mid 40s like me, as opposed to someone who's in their early 20s who you're trying to court for a transfer into your institution. But let's talk a little bit about paid social prospecting. Using the information from your historic enrollment funnel, Capture essentially builds a profile and then deploys an ad, whether it's program specific or site specific. If you have multiple branch campuses, deploys that to an area that you think is going to be favorable. It links over to you potentially to your RFI page. In some cases, we'll link it to a landing page that has a short form that we use. And essentially, it creates a very quick engagement and intervention in order to get that student's interest. And many times, almost all the times that we use this, the leads that come in through paid social prospecting, as we like to call it in the shop, are new to your pool. So it's a great mechanism for like getting new students from using the Instagram feeds or Facebook or LinkedIn if you're in a graduate space. Like there are tools that are out there that we can populate this to the masses, but the masses in this case is a zeroed in group, say ages 17 to 21, potentially interested in non-nursing programs who live in a geographic area. So that's a very kind of quick and dirty look at what those profile characteristics would look through. But you see the stats on the bottom, right? Like I said, we love to measure things. So we did this, one of our first partners to use this in Florida. We populated a few different metro areas. We had an ad running, I think it was a 3-week period. The ad got nearly 3,300 clicks. 350 of those identified into the website of the institution. So we were able to say, hey, look, we can see that transfer into the website. And then beyond that, we got 50 new inquiries out of a single campaign that we had put together. So for those of you who are looking at your pipeline right now, 50 new inquiries sounds like a great amount. And I would say that that's true. And the last new form that I want to talk through is really kind of a return to what has been, right? We all know that the website that you have is the most valuable real estate, especially now for your for your undergraduate enrollment. Like it's where students are, and with higher traffic on the web, it also should equate to higher traffic on your website. So whether you're driving them in through other banner campaigns or just organic traffic, being able to harness them and proactively put forms in front of those prospects to fill out to become an inquiry is a critical ingredient. And I would say, I just hit a word there. We all have RFIs on our website, right? Requests for information or inquiry forms, whatever phraseology you use. But capture forms are proactive in that they pop up in front, and you can see an example here from one of our partners in the South where this form pops up in front and the student has, this anonymous lead has no choice but to interact with it or actually clicked off of it. There's an X on the top that would show up on the screen so they can get out of it if they needed to. But here's a couple of statistics from some campaigns that we have run in the past. One campaign, 3,600 impressions, led to 250 submissions for a 7% conversion. 58% of those, or 145 of them, 146, were organic. And then the second example is from a larger state institution where we had a campaign that was up and running for over a year. But during that year, they were able to pull in, and I won't read through all the stats there, but roughly 1,400 applications that were linked back to the original kind of first source was that progressive identification campaign. Progressive identification, Capture has a ton of tools that we use. Progressive identifications have long been my most favorite child in those, and they are super powerful. And I think Jeff Salingo there hits it very well in the fact that this type of data-driven marketing, the things that, these campaigns go to anonymous IP addresses that are on your website. You don't know who they are. It populates, it puts this form right in front of them, and it gives them a chance to say, yeah, I'm interested. I'm gonna fill out 3 different fields, click send, and it's off it goes. You can see the results there on the right-hand side of the enrollment likelihood that we get and other items like that. And I'm wrapping up because I know I'm over time. But let's just not forget that this sort of marketing automation has far more usage than just the top of the funnel. We see that students who are engaged in marketing automation have higher admitted rates, higher enrollment rates, and then on the bottom in my infographics there, you can also see the equivalence that we see in terms of application and how that converts. Whew. I love talking fast when it comes to webinars. It's just my thing. So that is the end of point number 1. Certainly, this is an era where we need to re-energize our search processes. We need to overturn every stone. And now it's time for me to take a little bit of a backseat so Anna can talk about email marketing.
Awesome, thanks, Jamie. So as I was listening, it struck me that I think one thing you've hit on in your presentation is the fact that the student prospect audience that we're used to is possibly going to be coming from other sources in the foreseeable future. And one question I think we should be asking ourselves is, how is that going to potentially change the way that we should be messaging those pools? So as kind of an introduction, what I'm here to talk about today is really the story of how Capture changed our email strategy over the last about 18 months or so. If many of you work directly with email outreach, you may have noticed that email seems to be acting differently and maybe kind of weirder than it did before. Maybe you aren't seeing the kind of results from it that you have in the past, or maybe the results you are getting with email don't seem to align with overall results in your outreach campaigns. So what's happening here? Capture looked at this information and wanted to figure it out too. We were seeing some of the same changes and some of the same inconsistencies, and we're hearing concerns from our clients who were also seeing those kinds of changes as well. And then around 18 months ago, we put together basically a crack team to focus on the email problem and figure out a solution. The team included marketers, technology people, product people, client-facing people, and we all engaged in a ton of research, looking at external information and and looking at data that we've had from about 11 or so years of sending email. And all that was to try to answer the questions, what's going on with email and how can we fix it? So before I get into that too much, let's take a quick trivia break. You don't have to put your answers into the comments or anything. You can just yell them out loud and see if your coworker or your dog, if you're working from home, decide that you're crazy. So question number 1, 90% of students' first interaction happens within the first how many email messages? And Jamie, you can do the drum roll and bring up the number.
Whoa,
All right.
I forgot the drum roll. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I'll forgive you this time. Okay, so 12 is the answer there. That basically means that 90% of the people who are going to be responsive to email are going to respond within those first 12 messages. We came up with this solution by looking at results we've acquired from sending over 500 million emails over about 11 years, and that accounts for thousands of campaigns. We found that 90% of the people who are going to respond to email will do it within the first 12 emails you send, and that means that there's a long tail with the last 10%. They could respond in the 13th email or the 30th email, and while the upfront cost of sending more emails is pretty negligible, we'll get to why it may be more costly in the long run to kind of chase that tail. All right, next trivia question. True or false, if your email messages don't land in the primary inbox for Gmail, they have almost 0 chance of being opened. And drum roll. All right, false. The answer is false. Studies have actually shown that emails in the promotions tab in Gmail have only a very slightly smaller chance of being read than those in the inbox. So now you know. All right, so let's talk about why is email still important? I hear from time to time that the phrase email is dead. And it's one of those myths that won't seem to go away. But as probably we all know, the reality is very different. Over 80% of Gen Z checks email at least once a day. And as a very tech-savvy generation, they know what they're looking for, and they have specific expectations for how email should be. So they expect accessibility. Being able to access any information at any time is kind of a requirement, and having the ability to view emails on any device at a moment's notice is critical. We all have our phones on us a majority of the day, so it's no surprise really that emails is still an important channel for communication. And especially when the information in the email is extremely relevant and answers questions that prospects have. Emails are also easily trackable and targeted. We can track open rates, click-through rates, and bounce rates on a daily basis, and we can tailor our outreach based on the findings from that information. And this allows us to make timely optimizations during our campaigns in order to increase performance. Automation is a wonderful aspect to email and allows your team and also our team to monitor and focus on other key pieces in the marketing plan. And then finally, email is, or at least should be, personalized and provide the opportunity to connect quickly. So if a prospect receives an email from your institution, they should know that the information is relevant to them, and they should know how to get in touch with you whenever they would like to, or as quickly as they would like to set up more contact. Okay, Jamie, next slide. All right, so when we looked at what we were doing as a company, we found a lot of good things when it came to email. Our content was good, we had great copy, great design, and we were using the right general themes. We looked at how we were targeting messaging and at personalization, and that was good too. But we did find we were less responsive on the timing of a prospect's entering the enrollment decision journey. All right, go ahead, Jamie. Next slide. No problem. So finally, we took a very honest look at where email was falling short. Trying to chase the long tail that I mentioned earlier on email lists was largely the reason for a lot of the issues. Sending more and more email messages to prospects who frankly are not that into us, right? Led to inflated send counts that took away focus from prospects who were interested. It also ended up decreasing deliverability of emails as email ISPs decided to label messages as unimportant or even spam. And all this together resulted in a less than relevant experience for our prospects, and more importantly, an opportunity for us to step up our email game. So our team looked at how we wanted to define success. We decided our messaging was good at its core, so the most we would likely need to do is modify, not completely overhaul. And we decided to focus on 3 aspects, which you can see there. So increasing engagement, improving our list management, and creating actionable and meaningful reporting that we as a company could take action from, and also our clients could take action from as well. Okay, next slide. Okay, and I should have had you do a drum roll here as well, Jamie.
Yeah, I know, that would have been a good one.
So the system we came up with, we're calling the behavioral email series. It allows us to talk about messages in 3 categories. So welcome, connect, and re-engage. The initial welcome emails immediately provide the reason for the outreach to the student or the prospect so that they understand not only how we receive their contact information, but also why we're messaging them. This helps them know that we're not spam, and most importantly, it begins to build trust with the prospect. So we also, as part of that, we also have a prominent button or a link in the email that makes opting out easier, basically, and provides an obvious way for those who are not interested to stop receiving communications. This is a really important step for list hygiene and keeping those lists clean and making sure that the people you're messaging are people who want to receive your messages. The connect part of the series is where the bulk of our email communications happen. This is where we present, a variety of what we call major value propositions mapped to the enrollment decision journey. These are the things that we want to highlight about about the schools, the institutions that we send messaging for, and let prospects know why this particular school is a great place for them and what this particular school has to offer. The goal of these emails are to educate the student about the institution and of course encourage them to take the next step in their journey, whether that's filling out an inquiry form or applying or depositing, whatever that may be. And finally, re-engagement emails are for those who don't interact with the first sets of emails. It's basically a second attempt made using what we call breakup emails, in which we let the student know that they will no longer receive emails if they don't engage with the content. This sets expectations with the prospect and is also an additional very important layer of data hygiene to ensure that we're only contacting those who want the information that we're sending out. If there is no response to the re-engagement emails, we consider the prospect to be inactive, and basically we stop sending to them. All right, go ahead, Jamie, to the next slide. This next slide is to show a sample email series, and just to give you an idea of how everything kind of fits together. I'm not going to go into all the details here, but you can kind of see how they flow into each other. The welcome emails at the top, followed by the main content pieces. They're here labeled as MVP emails, and they take up the majority of the space, and then breakup emails there at the end.
Yeah, I'm just going to interject here because I love this slide because it shows just so much of the if-then, if this behavior, then this, and it kind of moves into all these different channels. So it's super complex, especially probably for those who maybe are seeing something like this for the first time. And I'm glad probably it's best not to explain through it, but I think it's just a wonderful example of how behavioral analytics just need to be so much of our framework these days, because there is no cookie cutter anymore that kind of works for everyone.
Right. I mean, as you get into more personalization and being more responsive to behavior, of course, it's going to up the complexity level more and more and more. So yeah, it definitely is a complex slide to look at, but you know, but that's okay. It's really just to show how everything sort of fits together, flows into each other, and you know, that's the kind of messaging that we're planning for our prospects now. Okay, Jamie, I think you can go ahead and move on to the next slide. All right, finally, we get to talk a little about results. I'm going to throw in a little disclaimer that this is still somewhat early for this system, but everything we're seeing thus far has been extremely positive and has been very much in line with our expectations. Our testing is showing better acceptance by a variety of email providers. Importantly, Gmail is included in that, basically resulting in better inbox placement. Our early results for the emails are also showing higher open rates. And where we're focusing on those responsive, more interested students, the open rates are in some cases extremely high, as in over 30 or 40%, you know, open rates. All in all, we believe strongly that we've come up with a stronger and much smarter solution that works with some of these changing email expectations, and kind of rather than assuming that just because email is changing means that email is dead, we think that this is a solution that works with the changes that we're seeing. So I think that that's all I wanted to cover on here, Jamie. So we may actually have made up a little bit of time because I talk fast too.
You killed it. It was amazing. Like, well done. And you know, like, I am often someone who needs to have someone make up Slack for me. So you totally did that, Anna. Thanks for not only presenting that, but also like kind of walking through the details of that study and what that study was. I mean, I think, you know, the fact that it was a 18-month process looking at aggregated 11 years worth of data to understand those sets and really measuring like, how do we do this better so that we can see more success for our partners. Like that is again, that's what gets me up in the morning to work for this company. So I love being out there on the front lines. So thanks for sharing so much. And I should say, I'm going to give like lots of credit to Anna and her team. They did a ton of the analysis and looking at those communication attributes, and you know, she talked about general themes, and they do these incredible meetings even outside of the study where they look at, hey, which messages are resonating well, how do we make more of those and optimize on what's play to our success, if you will. So the last part of our agenda today is setting the stage for 2021. And I think that, you know, obviously we know that setting the stage for 2021 might be somewhat difficult, not knowing what fall 20 is going to look like on so many campuses. But I feel like if there's one thing that we've all gained from the last few months, it's that we have to have plan A, B, and C, and maybe all the way up to like J, L, or M, in order to understand like what the future will look like. So here's my quick checklist on things that I would recommend or things that we would recommend as a company to look at maybe over the next 6 months. And I show here in my planner like the later months of 2020, but maybe there's you know, all the way into the early or mid spring of 2021 or further. First and foremost, like we've talked about today, diversifying the sources that you have. For some of us, this has become not a matter of choice. We have to do this. You have to do this. I would encourage you, if you are one of the ones that's out there in the market, scratching your head, wondering what's next for your inquiry pool or your search lead sources. My email address is going to be at the final part of this presentation. Feel free to write me a quick note. I'd love to help. I'd love to just be a sounding board if that's of any interest to you. But make sure that no matter what, that you're kind of overturning every stone that's a possible source for your institution. Expand your online capabilities and take advantage of that augmented traffic that we're all seeing, and for the foreseeable future will be there as virtual visits and virtual tours and potentially, virtual open houses become a, more and more a part of our framework, that traffic is going to be sustained through the fall. And as a result, even spring and fall travel are unlikely for the next academic cycle. So consider migrating some of your budget into more digital tools in order to capitalize on that that digital footprint that's out there among your 2021, 2022, and also the influencers among them. Your parent population right now has more concerns than potentially any group, maybe even more than their enrolling dependents. So make sure that you're speaking to them through your online resources and tools and through your email communications flow. As Anna said, email is not dead. Email is actually potentially becoming a greater part of the communication flow this year. I think I've always held the opinion that there are the communication tools that we have at our disposal are an arsenal, and they're not ones that will go away. They only get added to, and then they maybe get a diminished share. So email is going to be here forever, or for at least until I am not here anymore. And make sure that you're reevaluating that you're reviewing your comm flows, that you're looking at what this means for you, that you're creating segmentations. And I would say even this year, make sure that you're updating it as different things come available, different pieces of insight and information on your campus are there. This is going to be the year when an email comm flow to prospects and inquiries is not a set it and forget it strategy. It's going to need to be morphing and addressing the needs that are on their minds. Make sure that you're understanding the needs that are on their minds. And make sure that you're assessing bi-weekly the deliverability and the open rates by population. So whether or not that's by campaign or by source, make sure that you're looking at, hey, how are these fall 21s from this, whether it's a new search source or ACT or College Board SAT. Make sure that you're looking at those and understanding, hey, which ones are being most successful and which messages are landing the best. And above all, make sure, like we do at Capture, make sure that you have a capability to predict and measure and then report on different aspects of your comm flow. So attribution and ROI are two that come to mind automatically, but this has never been such an important thing as it is right now for the institutions that we work at. So we have 2 minutes to go. Maybe have time for 1 or 2 questions that have come in. So let's see if Emma's still there.
I am here, Jamie, and I'm here to ask some questions to both you and to Anna. So let's get started with the first one. Just because of time, we'll just ask one each maybe, and then we will wrap things up here. So Anna, kind of going back to your slide about the behavioral email series, you had in your welcome email at the beginning of the series that had a question about, for the student, talking about either if the student's interested in receiving these messages or not. Wouldn't it be detrimental to encourage people to unsubscribe at the beginning of that series?
So it's a good question, and it's one that's come up before. The real answer is that you don't want to send email messages to people who don't want to receive them, and knowing that right off the bat will only help your list hygiene. And what I mean by list hygiene is the cleanliness of your lists, and making sure that you're sending to an audience who wants to receive your information. So the short answer is no. Having an unsubscribe early on and very, and having it be a very obvious button that prospects can click on easily is really only going to help. It's not going to hurt your campaign.
Okay, nice. And then just one last one for Jamie. Jamie, you just mentioned in your checklist to diversify your search sources. Do you have any recommendation for search sources that might not have been mentioned in the presentation that you'd recommend for partners?
Sure. Yeah, I actually I do. I definitely did not put all the search sources in there that I am familiar with or have used. What I would encourage, maybe because there is some regionality to search sources and some institution types, My email is right there. If the person who asked that question wants to email me directly, that would be great. And then we can kind of just walk through, hey, what sources might be good for you. Some of them, I will say, are super obscure, and you kind of have to dig for them. Yeah, so I'll leave that at that because it can be subjective.
Okay, and that's the time right there. We're at 2:16. So thank you everyone for attending our session today.